A diary page turned by itself and revealed tomorrow's date. The wind carried your childhood nickname across the night air. Someone wrote your name in dust on a window you've never seen. You woke with dirt beneath your nails, though you hadn't left your room. The candle flame pulsed like a second heartbeat. Your shadow stretched a little farther than it should have. A stranger described your fears perfectly without you ever speaking them. The clock hands ticked backward for a single minute. Someone whispered, "Finally, you're here," and vanished into silence. You saw your own face in a crowd, smiling faintly before disappearing. The mirror fogged up, spelling out a word you didn't write. A photograph aged, but your face stayed the same. The forest paths rearranged themselves behind you. Someone sighed in relief the moment you opened your eyes. The stars flickered in sequence as if blinking in code. A reflection tilted its head when you didn't. The silence thickened until it felt alive. You dreamed of drowning and woke with water in your hair. Someone counted your breaths softly in the dark. A shadow moved before you did. The walls seemed to breathe when you stopped speaking. You found your own handwriting in a place you'd never been. The stars dimmed when you whispered a forbidden word. A stranger hummed your childhood lullaby. The clock rang once at an hour that doesn't exist. Someone whispered, "Not yet," just as you were about to decide. The silence trembled every time you blinked. The photograph straightened itself when you weren't looking. You felt remembered by something you had forgotten. Someone repeated a sentence from your dream in real life. The shadow grinned, faintly before vanishing. The night pressed against the window as though it was watching you. Someone whispered your last word before you said it. The stars brightened when you turned away. The candle refused to die even after the wax was gone. You found footprints circling your bed, but none leading away. A reflection lingered a second longer than you did. The silence stopped when you held your breath. Someone sketched your face without ever meeting you. A knock echoed from beneath the floorboards. The flame leaned sharply toward you, listening. A stranger waved at you from tomorrow. The shadows froze when you turned on the light. Someone whispered your destiny in a dream. The photograph smiled faintly when you left the room. The stars rearranged into a warning only you could read. Someone whispered, "This isn't the first time." You dreamed of falling and woke midair. The silence sighed as though disappointed. A reflection whispered a secret you weren't ready to hear. The candle's smoke curled into an unfamiliar symbol. Someone traced your name into the fog of a stranger's mirror. The clock ticked louder with every word you spoke. A stranger told you a memory you hadn't lived yet. Someone whispered your story in reverse. The stars trembled when you blinked. The mirror cracked in the shape of an eye. Someone whispered, "You're late." The silence bent the air heavy around you. You dreamed of waking and woke again. The photograph wept faint tears of ink. Someone sighed your name from far away. A reflection stepped forward before you did. The stars spelled out a secret you didn't want to read. A knock echoed 3 times in perfect rhythm. Someone whispered, "Look behind you." The shadow wrapped itself around your feet. You woke with ash in your hands. The silence pulsed in rhythm with your breath. Someone whispered, "Do not forget." The stars brightened the moment you closed your eyes. You felt someone sit beside you, though the chair was empty. The candle leaned away from your touch. Someone whispered your name into the night sky. A shadow lingered in the corner, even when the lights were on. The silence stretched until it felt endless. Someone whispered, "We meet again." The stars flickered twice when you asked them a question. A diary appeared with secrets you hadn't spoken aloud. The wind carried a voice you almost recognized. A stranger smiled as if they knew your ending. You woke with another heartbeat in your chest. The shadows leaned closer when you ignored them. Someone whispered your fear and smiled. The mirror tilted itself toward you. You once laughed at something no one had said yet. The stars blinked twice more than the rest. Someone whispered your name from beneath the sea. The silence pressed against your ears until it ached. A stranger swore they'd been waiting for you. The photograph turned its gaze elsewhere. Someone whispered your thoughts a second before you did. The candle grew brighter as the room darkened. A knock echoed softly from inside the mirror. Someone whispered, "It begins again." The shadows stretched toward you as if reaching. The stars blinked out in sequence, one by one. A stranger repeated your dream, word for word. The silence warmed when you spoke. Someone whispered your ending into your dream. The mirror fogged with your name written backward. You woke up with water dripping from your hands. Someone whispered, "Almost there." The stars dimmed when you closed your eyes. The silence held its breath when you did. A reflection smirked when you frowned. Someone whispered, "Not this time." The clock rang 13, and only you heard it. A shadow stepped out of your own. Someone whispered your secret through the keyhole. The stars shimmered only when you turned away. You found footprints leading into the sea. Someone whispered your destiny while you slept. The photograph shifted to face you. The silence exhaled when you spoke. A stranger described a scar you've never shown. The candle flame bent to the sound of your thoughts. Someone whispered, "Soon." The shadows followed you even in daylight. The stars brightened one by one as you walked outside. Someone whispered your full name, slowly. The mirror held onto your reflection a moment too long. The silence trembled when you asked a question. Someone whispered your story from the end to the start. You woke with a word carved faintly into your skin. The stars formed a spiral above your head. The shadows bent themselves around your steps. Someone whispered, "You've been here before." The silence leaned closer, waiting. And when the clock struck again, you realized time had been watching you all along. The clock stopped at a random time, the exact moment you were being thought of. A mirror cracked silently, but only on the side where your reflection stood. Someone burned a letter with your name on it. Yet the smoke spelled it out again. A forgotten song played on the radio, and every lyric seemed to describe your secret life. A stranger dreamt of you crying and woke up with tears on their pillow. You woke at 3:15 a.m., the exact second someone whispered your name in their sleep. A photograph of you changed overnight. Someone else was standing closer than before. The shadows in your room shifted slightly, though nothing had moved. A candle blew out, but the smoke curled into a word you didn't want to read. The stars dimmed for a heartbeat, and when they returned, they spelled your initials. Someone you've never met remembers a moment you haven't lived yet. Your reflection mouthed a word seconds before you did. You laughed at a joke no one had spoken yet. The silence in the room leaned forward as if it was listening. You woke up twice in the same night, remembering two different dreams of the same place. Why? The clock stopped at a random time, the exact moment you were being thought of. The lights flickered twice, right when your name was whispered in someone else's dream. You woke up at 3:17 a.m., the same time a stranger wrote about you in their journal. A candle went out by itself, though no wind was near, and you felt someone call your name. The mirror fogged over, revealing words you had never written, yet in your own handwriting. Somewhere, a stranger's heartbeat skipped, exactly when yours did. The photograph on your wall changed slightly. A figure stood closer than before. You laughed at a joke you hadn't heard yet, and someone miles away smiled knowingly. The radio static whispered your name between songs. Your reflection mouthed a word seconds before you did. The shadows leaned forward as if listening when you stopped speaking. A knock echoed from your desk drawer, but you live alone. The stars aligned briefly into your initials, then scattered as though hiding. You woke with a word carved faintly into your palm. Someone you've never met dreamed of you again last night and woke crying. The wind outside spoke your forgotten childhood nickname. A candle's flame leaned toward you as if it wanted to whisper. You found your own handwriting in a place you've never been. The silence around you grew heavier, as if waiting for you to notice. The clock struck 13, and only you heard it. A stranger swore they'd seen you yesterday, though you were miles away. The room exhaled when you stepped inside. You dreamed of someone, only to find their name written in dust on your window. The ground trembled softly under your footsteps, as though remembering you. A diary appeared with your secrets, none of which you'd ever confessed. The flame on the candle pulsed like a heartbeat. You heard your name whispered inside the wind chimes. The stars blinked twice when you asked them a question. Someone you've never known swore they'd been waiting for you. A reflection smirked when you frowned. The silence paused as if expecting you to answer. Someone wrote your name in fog glass, though you were alone. The pages of a book flipped open, landing on a story about you. You felt a hand brush yours, but no one was near. The forest grew quieter when you stepped into it. Someone whispered, "Finally, you're here." You woke up twice in the same morning, remembering 2 different yesterdays. The mirror cracked, but only where your reflection stood. You found footprints circling your bed, but none leading away. The candle burned lower, then suddenly grew taller again. A stranger smiled as though they already knew your ending. The stars rearranged themselves, spelling a warning. You've been homesick for a place that doesn't exist. Someone whispered, "Not yet," and vanished. The shadow stretched toward you when you turned away. A stranger hummed your childhood lullaby. The silence thickened until it felt alive. Someone whispered your thoughts a second before you did. The photograph aged, but your face stayed the same. You once laughed at something no one had said yet. A knock echoed from behind the mirror. The wind carried a voice you almost recognized. Someone traced your name into the dust of a forgotten room. A shadow moved before you did. The flame bent away when you exhaled. Someone whispered your destiny while you slept. The walls shifted slightly as though breathing. A stranger greeted you as if they knew your secrets. The stars dimmed when you whispered a forbidden word. Someone sighed your name from far away. A candle went out, but the smoke curled into letters. The night pressed against the window like it was watching. You felt remembered by something you had forgotten. A photograph straightened itself when you weren't looking. The clock hands moved backward, following your heartbeat. Someone whispered, "Not this time." The silence leaned closer every time you blinked. You dreamed of drowning and woke with water in your hair. The stars vanished in sequence, one after another. Someone whispered your name inside the static. You recognized a face in the crowd, but it was your own, older. The shadows froze when you turned on the light. Someone knocked softly on the floor beneath you. The forest paths rearranged themselves behind you. A stranger described your deepest fear perfectly. The silence grew warmer when you spoke. You heard your name in the laughter of strangers. The candle flame danced to your unspoken thoughts. Someone whispered, "It begins again." A shadow lingered in the corner, even when the lights were on. The stars brightened when you turned away. Someone's dream replayed inside your mind. The reflection tilted its head when you didn't. You woke up with dirt beneath your nails. A diary page turned by itself, revealing tomorrow's date. The silence pulsed in rhythm with your breath. Someone sighed relief the moment you opened your eyes. The clock rang once at an hour that doesn't exist. A stranger called you by a name you haven't heard yet. The photograph smiled faintly when you left. You felt a hand rest on your shoulder, but no one was behind you. The stars flickered in sync with your thoughts. A reflection whispered a warning you didn't understand. You saw yourself standing across the street, watching. The shadows leaned closer when you ignored them. Someone whispered your secret through the keyhole. The candle flame bent sharply toward you, listening. The silence stretched until it felt endless. You dreamed of waking, then woke again. Someone counted your breaths softly in the dark. The mirror fogged up with a word you didn't write. A stranger told you a memory you'd forgotten. The stars blinked in a code you almost understood. A knock echoed from beneath your bed. Someone whispered, "You're late." The silence stopped when you held your breath. A shadow stepped forward, leaving yours behind. You felt someone sit beside you, though the chair was empty. The candle's smoke curled into an unfamiliar symbol. A reflection lingered longer than you. Someone whispered your ending into your dream. The stars scattered when you asked why. The silence sighed as though disappointed. Someone whispered, "You're almost there." A stranger sketched your face without ever meeting you. The mirror cracked in the shape of an eye. You heard your name spoken from under the floor. The photograph changed positions overnight. Someone whispered your fear and smiled. The silence swallowed the sound of your steps. You woke with another heartbeat in your chest. A candle refused to die, even without wax. Someone whispered, "Look behind you." The stars formed a spiral above your head. A stranger repeated a sentence from your dream. The shadow grinned, faintly before vanishing. The silence trembled when you asked a question. Someone whispered your name into the night sky. You found your footprints leading into the sea. The clock ticked louder with every word you spoke. A reflection stepped forward before you did. The stars spelled out a secret you didn't want to read. Someone whispered, "This isn't the first time." The silence exhaled when you spoke. A knock echoed 3 times in perfect rhythm. You woke up with ash in your hands. Someone whispered your story in reverse. The photograph wept faint tears of ink. The stars trembled when you blinked. A stranger waved at you from tomorrow,